All right, so we're diving deep again today. This time it's 1960s Ethiopia. And our guide, a recently declassified CIA report.
Ooh, sounds juicy.
Oh, it is. It's like, picture this. Cold War, tensions are high. African nations are getting their independence.
Yeah, a real turning point.
Exactly. And Ethiopia, I mean, with its long history, its culture, it's like they're trying to figure out where they fit in all of this.
I can only imagine. The world was changing so rapidly back then.
So this report, right, it keeps saying Ethiopia is strategically important, but not for, like, the obvious reasons.
Oh, like what?
Their location. They're on the Red Sea.
Ah, the oil route.
You got it. Whoever controls Ethiopia, basically, could control a big chunk of global trade.
Makes sense. Even with a smaller military, they could disrupt things just by being there.
Right. And that's the thing. The report is Ethiopia's military, well, it wasn't exactly top-notch back then.
And that almost made them more strategically important. Think about it. A superpower wouldn't need a huge army to exert influence.
It's almost like the weaker they were, the more attractive they became.
In a way, yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? These seemingly small players can have a huge impact on the world stage.
Totally. So we've got this strategic location, right? But then internally, things weren't exactly peaceful either.
Oh, I bet. What did the report say about that?
Well, it breaks down the population by, ethnic groups and religion, and it sounds like a powder keg.
Ooh, really? Give me some details.
So you have the Amhara, they were dominant, then the Tigray, they had these separatist leanings, and the Galas, they were the largest group, and even a bunch of Arab merchants in the mix.
Wow, talk about a melting pot. Did they get along?
That's the thing. The report makes it seem like these divisions really mattered for how the country was run.
I see, like different groups vying for power and influence.
Exactly. Land ownership, for example, it was tied to loyalty to the emperor. So Haile Selassie, he had to walk this tightrope, keeping powerful clans happy, but also trying to modernize the whole nation.
It's like a balancing act. Did they mention any specific clans in the report?
Yeah, actually, the Moja clan, wealthy, influential, and get this, they were even willing to criticize the emperor publicly.
Wow, bold move. It sounds like Selassie had his work cut out for him.
For real. But what about everyday people? How did they fit into all of this?
Good question. The report describes the economy as mostly agricultural. A lot of people were living on a subsistence basis. Meaning they were focused on survival, not so much on the global power struggles going on around them.
So while superpowers are fighting for control, everyday Ethiopians are just trying to get by.
Exactly. And get this, the report says barter was still a thing alongside actual currency.
Really? Like trading goods directly?
Yep. Some people would wait in the market, like literally, to make a purchase and a sale at the same time.
I guess when it's about basic necessities, you got to be resourceful.
For sure. It shows just how different the economic situation was back then. And despite all of that, Ethiopia was trying to develop, they had a 5-year plan going on from 57 to 61.
To do what?
Boost infrastructure, agriculture, industry, you name it. But here's the kicker. Both the U.S. and the Soviet Union were pouring aid into Ethiopia, each hoping to steer their development in their own way.
So it became a competition, like my development model is better than yours.
Totally, a development race. It wasn't just about helping Ethiopia, it was about winning hearts and minds, making Ethiopia a showcase for their ideology.
It's kind of like Ethiopia is stuck in the middle of this superpower showdown. Did the report say anything about, how the Ethiopians themselves felt about all of this, like all this outside influence?
Well, the report focuses more on like the facts on the ground, but you can definitely sense a tension there, right? Between needing help, accepting aid, but also wanting to like control their own destiny. I mean, that's got to be tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. Makes you think about like the long-term impacts of all this aid, right? Was it really just, pure generosity, or were there strings attached? Did it shape Ethiopia's future in ways they didn't even realize?
Big questions, for sure. The report doesn't really get into the motivations behind the aid, but one thing it does stress is that Ethiopia's development, it wasn't going to be a quick fix.
So no overnight miracles.
Nope, not according to the CIA anyway. It was going to be a long process requiring a ton of effort, smart planning, not just like one 5-year plan and boom, problem solved.
More like one step at a time, right?
Exactly. The report basically says that Ethiopia's future, it was going to depend on the choices they made, navigating these internal and external pressures. It wasn't preordained.
It makes sense. So what about Haile Selassie? Like, what kind of leader was he? Did he pick a side in the Cold War?
Honestly, the report doesn't really delve into his personality or his politics that much. It's almost like they were, I don't know, maybe intentionally trying to avoid making any judgments about him.
So we're left with kind of a mystery, huh?
Yeah, in a way, like we've uncovered this piece of history, but there are still these gaps, these missing pieces.
It's like a historical puzzle waiting to be solved.
That's what makes it so interesting, though, right? It's not about just like being given the answers. It's about thinking critically, looking at the evidence, coming up with your own interpretations.
Being a historical detective.
Exactly.
And you know what? This whole thing, it's still relevant today, right? Like we still see countries dealing with internal divisions, economic inequality, and powerful nations trying to, exert their influence.
All the time. History doesn't just disappear, it shapes the world we live in today.
For sure. So for our listeners out there, like what's the main takeaway from this glimpse into 1960s Ethiopia? Why should they care about this?
Well, I think it shows us just how interconnected the world is. Even back then, it's like, little things, seemingly insignificant details like where Ethiopia is located can have huge ripple effects.
Like the butterfly effect, right?
Exactly. It makes you think, what happened next? How did Ethiopia deal with all of this? Did they manage to modernize? That's the big question, isn't it? And well, the report doesn't give us the answer, but it does show us the factors that would shape Ethiopia's future. It gives us a starting point.
It's like we've just opened the door a crack, given them a peek into this moment in history. Hopefully it makes people want to learn more, find out what happened next.
Yeah, definitely. And not just about Ethiopia, but about all those big ideas we talked about, right? Like the Cold War, what it really means to develop a nation, how internal and external pressures, they all kind of play off each other.
And speaking of internal pressure, those ethnic and religious divisions, right? The report made it pretty clear those were a big deal.
Oh, yeah. It really highlighted, I think, how tough nation building is, especially in a place like Ethiopia with so much diversity. It makes you wonder, long term, did they overcome those divisions? Or did they eventually lead to more conflict, more instability?
It's almost like trying to create something whole out of all these different pieces. Can they make it work? Or will it all just fall apart? It's a question I think a lot of nations have faced.
Totally. And the report, it doesn't give us any easy answers, but it does make us think about these things, about the consequences of decisions of historical events.
This whole deep dive, it's been pretty thought-provoking, huh? It's like we stumbled upon this treasure chest of insights, and each one just raises more questions.
That's what's so cool about history, though. It's not about, having all the answers. It's about the process of discovering, of putting the pieces together, trying to understand how we got to where we are now.
And it's not just about, the big names, the big events. It's about everyday people, too, caught up in these huge changes, trying to make their lives work. It's about their struggles, what they hoped for, how they kept going, even when things were tough.
I love that. It makes history feel, real, more relatable. And that's what makes this deep dive so worthwhile.
So as we wrap up our look at Ethiopia in 1960, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
I hope it makes them, more curious. I hope it makes them question things, dig deeper into the stories that shaped our world. It's like history is this ongoing conversation, and we all have a part in it.
Well said. So to everyone out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that conversation going. We'll catch you on our next deep dive. CBI.